Welcome to the Beyond Leadership podcast, where we host outstanding individuals and we discover new dimensions of leadership and their talents and recipes for success. How are you going to change the status quo? What's your plan?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some companies that copied some stuff, and there's some companies that adapted. That's exactly what I'm going for.
Awesome.
Adapt, copy, be better. Push us, push me to try even harder. Set the bar higher.
Lepo pozdravljeni, dragi poslušalci. Danes imamo novo epizodo in jaz se zelo veselim, ker smo zvabili na oddajo enega zelo izjemnega posameznika, Nejca Palirja. Lepo pozdravljen, Nejc.
Živijo, Mark.
Zdaj, danes bomo mi malo drugačno delali to epizodo, ker Nejc dela za mednarodno podjetje, švedsko mednarodno podjetje in so zelo močni in bi rad jaz ta pogovor zapeljal v angleščini. Tako da, dragi poslušalci, zdaj bomo mi preklopili na angleščino, tako da lepo prosim, sproste se, uživite in spoznali boste ogromne dimenzije, ki jih ima Nejc, ne samo znanja, pogledov, ampak tudi ogromen izkušenj, ki jih je doživel v podjetju. Tako da jaz se že veselim.
Jaz tudi.
Okay, let's switch to English. Dear guests, today we have an amazing person, Chief Experience Officer at Triton 37, producer of all things digital, visionary and entrepreneur, Nejc Palir. Welcome.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here, finally. It's been a long time coming and really excited about this conversation.
That's true. And I was extremely excited to have you on because the mere depth and the amount of experience you have, it's truly unbelievable. And today we're going to focus on a couple of topics. One is definitely the innovation aspect, digitization. And the second one, which is extremely important, is the culture that you've established. It's truly unbelievable. So before we deep dive into the conversation, I really want to introduce you to the public because you truly have a ton of experience. Okay, so Nejc Palir is Chief Experience Officer at Triton 37. We're going to talk a little bit later about what the company does. And he's a true entrepreneur whose journey started at a very young age, and he's so far been colored with many international achievements. And I know personally that he's been an advisor to a couple of startups, and he has a lot of experience in this field as well. He's on a mission, and his mission is to influence positive change, challenging the status quo, empowering the underdogs, and improving communities one person at a time, which is amazing. So congrats.
Thank you.
Nothing brings Nejc greater joy than to build what can't be built. So you really like challenges.
I love challenges. I mean, to me, the thing that makes me tick is someone going and saying this cannot be done or this will never work. That's the driver.
Awesome. And I know that you're the right guy because we met in the circumstances where things were about to happen and where somebody said no. And recently you have embarked on a journey of challenging the local mindset in Slovenia. And we're going to talk about this journey endeavor that you've taken, and it's quite amazing. So my first question is always when I get the chance to speak with an amazing person, if we were colleagues or classmates in college or in primary school, were you always this ambitious, innovative? Did you always challenge the status quo? Did you always want to make changes?
Wow. What a great question and what a trip down memory lane. First of all, thank you very much for the flattering comments, and I really appreciate it. I'm humbled by it. Thank you very much. When I think about it, back in high school, back in primary school, no, I wasn't like this. But I always been a bit different. I wouldn't fit the model of a typical kid in any way, shape, or form. Things happen. Different things happen to different people. I wouldn't describe myself as having a particularly difficult childhood or a great childhood. I mean, I loved myself as a kid. But, certain things do happen in life which brings you challenges and that you have to overcome with either yourself or your family, and that builds character. And that character building experience brings different desires. And one of my desires has always been to grow up. Like I've been like on this fast track of growing up as fast as I can. So like going back in my mind, it was always be tall, be able to provide, and have a beard. I didn't succeed on all of them, but I'm working on one. But no, I mean, early in primary school, I used to love school. I used to love sports. I used to love challenges. But I was this shy, timid kid, and I think that comes back from wanting more, but not having the courage or the dare to try more. And then, you know, fast forwarding over to high school, it was mostly about trying to challenge the leaders that I had there. And the leaders in your high school years are your teachers, they're your coaches, you know, when it comes to sports. And if we were to meet there, you would probably see me as this kid who fights authority or doesn't agree with it, doesn't agree with the ways of working, doesn't feel that it's particularly fair or right when people in power use that power to serve their own egos instead of helping kids or trying to empower them to get to their goals. I was super indulged in sports. I was playing hockey, which I believed that was going to be a big part of my life at that time.
Me too.
But I also started working on these digital creation things at a very early age, even back in primary school. I remember I had like my first customers when I was in the 8th grade, creating like different logos, different websites, even systems that are in production and used still today, which is very scary for those companies. I definitely changed. And when I look at back from this kind of shy kid that didn't quite fit in to all the hurdles and all the different challenges that I had the opportunity to be a part of in the last couple of years, especially in the last decade and a half. I mean, I'm very proud of that growth journey, and you know, it just kind of brings the reflection to myself that anyone can become anything, and that's also what's driving kind of this fuel and this power and this ambition when I work with my colleagues and my team today, and when I reach for these transformative efforts of how to leverage the community for the better. Oh, that's a very, very long answer and a very short question, and that's how I am. My mind just wanders sometimes.
It's fantastic because I can see the passion, I can see the spark in your eyes. You know, you just explode with energy, knowledge, and everything. So I want to really go into the details of the position of Chief Experience Officer. Is something that you don't see every day. It's something I would say that appears in the companies that have this mindset, different mindset.
Yeah.
And I really want to deep dive into Triathlon 37. So what do you actually do? Because I know you're a multinational company, you're growing at an extremely fast pace. So let's deep dive what you do and what the position of Chief Experience Officer entails.
Yeah, great question. I know it's a very unknown or not very common term. Mostly you would encounter it in product companies that have their own digital product, and there's a customer experience or a user experience at a forefront of it. But in our company, it means something completely different, and I'll get to that because I think we also need to understand where we're coming from. We're an IT consulting company. We help large enterprises, mostly in the Nordics, to create software for themselves or software for their customers.
Can you name a couple of brands so people will realize that these are big brands?
They're big brands, but these big brands also comes with some limitations sometimes on what we can name drop and not.
I know.
Let's say that these are large furniture, Swedish natured companies in yellow and blue. They're fruit-shaped companies that you carry around in your pocket. There's the clothing companies such as H&M's. There's the Spotify's. There's all the Nordics.
Awesome.
Companies that you can think of. And what we do for them is consulting services. We bring together experts who are super passionate about what they do. So this is like software developers, UX designers, product designers, project managers, quality assurance experts. people who really love to build products. And we combine this passion and this knowledge and this experience with existing experience at our clients. And together, so teams that are combined together, create awesome software for more than 1 billion of users worldwide right now.
Wow, that's a big number.
It's a big responsibility.
Yeah.
It's a big responsibility, especially in the last couple of years with security and data protection and basically just the pace of the world being so important for all of these companies and a crucial aspect for them to survive in this atmosphere today.
Let's go into the culture aspect. When I first met you and you introduced me to the Threat and 37 culture, it was something you only see in movies, or you see people talk about, you see articles, but nobody actually does it. It's nice to have it in an article, in an advertisement, in an ad, but nobody actually realizes it. So tell me, how did you start? How did the company start to develop this amazing culture that I'm sure that everybody in Slovenia already knows, but in Sweden it's pretty much a name for something really great?
Yeah, great question. Of course, everything starts with an idea, with that little seed of trying to do something different. And that something different often also comes from the frustration of not being able to have that or not being able to offer that. So in our case, that comes from our two founders, Martin Mazur and Oscar Hulfers. They are the founders of the Threat on 37 or the 1337, the elite way of life. And Martin and Oscar are great ambassadors for growing people. And they figured at a very early stage that growing people, the best thing and the best asset that we can build in people is knowledge. That's the experiences, that's the opportunities, that's the investments into their immediate value. As software professionals or as product professionals that they want to do and they want people to take out of this experience. We know that in any person's career, you have jobs and you have basically career opportunities. And there's a lot of companies that are just a stepping stone for the next step. And what we wanted to do is we realize that it would be very ambitious to think about us as a kind of lifetime stop for everyone. But we wanted to create a platform where everyone that encounters us, everyone that works with us, takes this value of knowledge, this investment, this treatment of people with them to the next step in life. And when we talk about putting people first, what we're talking about is putting knowledge and investment and understanding into them at our first priority. Because if you take care of that, those are the people that you're investing in. Yeah. Those are the people that are taking care of your clients, which is your revenue, your main source of income, your success. And that's something that we formed a company around, and that was back in 2010 in a small town in Sweden called Lund. It's a university town. And today we're over 260, 270 people, growing at a very rapid pace. We have very high recruitment standards and qualification standards, what it takes to be a part of our company. And we take our values very seriously. So our culture is definitely based on our values. We're a value-driven company. And we use those values as signposts in everything that we do and everything that we decide on. So every decision is always checked among these cornerstones of our culture. And I think that when we talk about our expansion to Slovenia, which happened back in 2018, I think those values and those cornerstones were absolutely that difference that put us on the map here and continue to put us at the forefront of a people-centric company in this area.
Let's go more into details, because the onboarding process and the way you treat all the applicants, it's truly amazing. I have some friends there. You and me are good friends, and every applicant that goes through your process is truly astounded by the every step that you take, every precision is timed, and even the applicants that get refused, they always get some sort of a recommendation, what they need to work on. They get this personal approach. So tell me a little bit about this.
Well, that just comes down to treating people with respect and treating people equally, regardless of who they are, where they are in their life, what background they have. And that doesn't just come to, the regular things that we talk about as society when it comes to religion, race, gender, and those things. It also comes from, variation and diversity in experience. So we take a lot of pride in making sure that everyone that comes in touch with us actually gets some sort of value from it. And that value can also be hidden in a decision that we're not right for each other at a certain point. So we always make sure to immediately respond to any applicant, and also read thoroughly through every application, review and analyze, is this a fit or not? And if unfortunately it's not a fit at any point in the process, we put a lot of energy and a lot of time and effort to make sure that that person also has some guidance in what would it take to actually be able to qualify for this step. So sometimes that might be in a form of a very long, very elaborate email. Sometimes that might be a phone call. Sometimes that might be a lunch or a coffee. But it's not also uncommon that we sometimes also help beyond the regular means with constructing a simple mentorship plan that is completely on our own volunteer time, to make sure that we're growing a culture of knowledge sharing in this community. Because when we arrived here in 2018, we noticed that the industry here is at a very different level of maturity that we're used to in other areas and internationally. And it needed some love and nurture. And what is kind of obvious here is that a lot of companies are worried about immediate needs. So that might be immediate recruitment needs. Who are we going to recruit tomorrow? Who are we going to recruit in a month? We have this number that we need to reach. But there's very little thought being given in who are we going to recruit in 5 years, in 10 years? Will there be an IT community here in 15 years? And if we want Slovenia and this wider Ljubljana region to be able to thrive in a digital age, we need to empower it as employers and as companies to make sure that there's a platform that people can learn, that people can find the IT industry as a desirable goal, that young people who are today joining high schools, universities, feel that this is the right step for them. And we can only do that by further investing in the community here, by giving honest and concrete feedback to people who are not there yet, and making sure that there is a thriving ecosystem that we can all thrive in together, not only tomorrow, but in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, because where our world is going today, we're experiencing huge shortages in specialists around the world. And one of those shortages is in software professionals. In Sweden alone today, we are short on 70,000 software developers. That's in a country of 10 million people.
Wow.
In US alone, by the year 2026, there's going to be a shortage of 1.2 million software developers. So that's a shortage that is going to be very difficult to overcome. So as software becomes more of a regular tool of every person out there, in order to bridge that shortage, in order to switch how we do our work as people, companies like ours need to step together and make sure that that is also something that people will desire to be a part of. That's I think that's one of the key things for us here in this region.
Awesome. And I want to add that I know that culture is extremely important, and a lot of companies are trying to build one that helps them not only retain but to attract a lot of talents. And this is something that you've worked really hard to. And one thing that we in the company I work for, started was facts and snacks, different team buildings, one-on-one talks. And I want to get a little bit more details about the things that you have. You've got a lot of family events, lead lunches, stand-ups, code nights. You've got the Kawabanga, which is a whole day dedicated to knowledge sharing and creating new family moments within Triton.
Yeah.
You've got Fika. So tell us, wow.
Yeah, one might say that is a part of the culture, and I would say that it does play a role. But a culture is the people behind it. So it's the people that you choose to invite into your circle. And of course, it's not about inviting the same people. It's about inviting interesting people with different opinions, with different contributions to the culture. So the main cornerstone, the majority of the culture that is built in companies is formed by interesting, open-minded people, leaders, professionals that share some sort of a common end goal or a vision. But when it comes to like perks, when it comes to a tooling of recruitment and retention, of course we operate in a highly competitive industry where I would say developers are much more desirable for employment than maybe their peers in other industries. Of course, those tools are something that you want to enrich lives with. So you, for instance, want to make sure that they have an interesting challenge at hand. So I would say that's one of the most common things that I've noticed that people value. So if you can have all the perks in the world, but if you don't have a true challenge that you can stand behind on, that you can think you're growing in, and that you love, then all these perks are going to be meaningless. But yeah, we have like a whole list of things that grew from probably a list of one or two over all these 12 years now. But I think what I mostly admire is having that perk and that benefit attitude when we were a company that couldn't afford much. And that's what I'm missing in some of the environments and in some of the competitors in this area, is that attitude of wanting more. I understand that some companies are in a position where some of the things that you mentioned there and the things that we are able to offer are privileged benefits. And it doesn't have to be all about money or investment. It could be just a simple conversation that you take after work with people. It could be a bag of chips and a few bottles of water or a few bottles of beer. It doesn't really matter. It's that little extra effort that you as a leader take to make sure to call your team members at home, during Christmas time, to go there and meet their family, to, make sure that they're doing fine, that they're healthy in time of need.
Exactly.
To make sure that they're resting properly, that they're taking, the vacation thing is not a bureaucracy thing, but it's a real meaningful relaxation period where people, re-energize and are able to take the next steps in life. It's about understanding that sometimes, even though if you're not the right fit together, that you're still a part of this amazing journey of a person. That you take pride in that, and that you're able to take their decisions with respect and make sure that they move on from your stepping stone to the next challenge with the best baggage and with the best opportunities. So it doesn't have to be about free breakfasts and international trips and knowledge budgets and knowledge time and those things. I mean, I'm very proud of the things that we are able to achieve in terms of benefits, and a lot of our benefits, with our mantra being sharing knowledge, are about enabling a platform that people can freely decide what they're going to learn, when they're going to learn, how they're going to improve themselves, and giving them a menu to choose from. So, for instance, we have designed a knowledge platform where we have domain leads. So these are leaders that we invest time in to investigate, research, and lead our most vital areas when it comes to software. And then we have competence leads within those domains that are designated to more granular topics within those domains. And our employees are a part of these competence groups. They grow together on topics that they feel are going to create most value for them. We have a sustainable knowledge budget that's available to everyone for consumption at their own free will. We have a knowledge manager employed that actually is a fully employed person just to cater to our knowledge needs, to design the courses, to create to create the opportunities for our employees to learn and to improve themselves. So a lot of our benefits are emphasis on knowledge, because we want to offer that value of growth, something that can never be taken away from you, something that is one of the most common things of how you're going to be valued in the world within your career journey. And then, of course, there's a lot of human aspects, a lot of social activities that we try to involve not only our employees, but also their families, and their significant others into being able to partake in this journey of meeting awesome people. I wish I could offer them more every single day. Honestly, I mean, I wish we could find ways to offer even more, to actually create environments where people would be able to thrive in even better. And we're doing some steps here in Ljubljana quite soon at the end of this year. That's definitely gonna enhance that much more than where we are today.
Wow. That's a knowledge bomb. I love the way you think, the way you're building the culture up and just taking care of the team, the employees. And I say I'm a huge advocate of for me, leadership is basically building relationships, investing in people, and finding that spark, that talent that ignites them. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't agree with you more. For me, one-on-one is extremely important, to take the time to have a coffee, water, beer, whatever, just to really get to know your teams, your individuals. So I want to get your insights into what does it take to be part of your team? What do you look for? What kind of attributes, skills, what's important to you?
The desire to be better, the desire to be one step further after this 24 hours has passed, to be slightly better than you were at this time in point. I mean, it's not like a pressure thing, like always do better, always be better. But definitely, I would say a main prerequisite for being a part of our teams is the desire to grow, to evolve, because especially in the software industry, if you become stale, if you become uninterested in what's happening in the world around you, if you do not have that desire to follow the trends or to follow the technology or to be part of that movement of moving technology forward, unfortunately, that significantly drops your personal value when it comes to value as a software developer. But also that doesn't bring value to our culture. That doesn't bring value to our other colleagues. That doesn't bring value in making sure that your experiences are openly shared and available to everyone. So I think that's definitely the main prerequisite. And then I would say the second one is the ability to learn and to adapt. I think flexibility is one of the often overlooked factors when it comes to
absolutely
to employment. But also, of course, immediate knowledge and experiences is something that we value, but not in terms of keywords, catchphrases, ability to memorize certain functions or certain approaches, but it's more about using your past experiences, which comes with time, and being able to harvest that ingenuity of how do you arrive to an answer to a certain problem, how do you approach a certain problem, who do you involve, who do you ask, do you work alone, or do you leverage this platform and this opportunity of working with brilliant people to actually solve either project or client needs. And then one of the important ones as well is the spirit. We want to bring open, light-minded and open-minded individuals together. One of the often disqualifiers when it came to our recruitment process, for instance, or our partnership processes, has always been of a personal nature as well. So it doesn't matter if you are the best developer, the best designer, the best leader in the world. If you have an attitude that brings harm or any sort of uncomfort to other people, then you are not the right person for us. And that's sometimes hard to do when you're facing a budget of numbers that you would like to reach as a company or as a manager. That sometimes is a very hard decision, but it's something that I also take a lot of pride in. Me and my colleagues and our wonderful talent acquisition team of always being able to, let's say, resist the temptation of an easy win. Because all in all, you're talking about people, their comfort, their safety zone, their feelings. So when you start introducing people who are, for instance, brilliant professionals, but not brilliant people in that equation, things start going south. And you usually do a lot more harm than good in the, not even the long term, even the short term. Those things come up.
So EQ and ego, definitely the two things you need to be careful about and consider.
Absolutely. And us being a consulting company, of course, communication plays a vital role. Consulting is not only software development. It's your ability to efficiently communicate and understand the problem as well, and then communicate a solution and be able to involve people, be able to get confidence from other people that this is the right solution, because sometimes we're talking about humongous investments, humongous projects that involve hundreds or thousands of people across the globe. So we need to make sure that communication is never hindered by let's say a bug in the line.
Definitely. Let's go more into the depth of your position. So Chief Experience Officer, I really want to know, what's your day like? How do you like starting the week on Sunday? Do you plan ahead? Do you plan for every day ahead? When do you wake up? Tell us about your average day, your typical day.
What's a Sunday? What is that?
Something between Saturday and Monday.
I wouldn't say that I'm living a particularly healthy balance. But again, I love what I do. I've joined Threaten 37 8 years ago by, leaving my past experiences where I worked as a CTO in Canada for an encryption company for 5 years. It was a very, very intense startup period for me. I was searching for something different. And what caught my attention at that time was this 35 people company in the south of Sweden with an amazing culture and an amazing attitude towards people. And that's what made me join at that time, and during that time I grew through different roles. I started as a consultant on the field. I worked with amazing companies, and I am very privileged at that experiences. And then moved to sort of an entrepreneurial visionary role within the company of opening up and leading the creation of our first international office here in Slovenia, and also taking the role as a regional manager at that time. So from that point on, life really didn't have any boundaries anymore. My personal life and my professional life mix on basically every second of my existence. But I love that. I thrive where I don't put myself to any limitations of, any given hours or any given days. It brings me fulfillment and it brings me joy to actually be able to do this and be able to work with people who are a part of this journey. And Chief Experience Officer is something that I've kind of always been doing. It's a role that we designed particularly also around the company that we want to be. We're proud where we are, but you can always be much better. So as Chief Experience Officer, I take the responsibility and the role of making sure that every interaction with our company, every interaction with Treton 37 is an interaction with a premium, trustworthy, and reliable brand. And that interaction can be between an experience between employees. So how do our employees perceive us? What does their experience look like? What kind of interactions do they have? At what quality those processes are run, for instance? How do they feel? What kind of memories do they take from that journey?
Wow.
And then that goes to, our recruits, our community, which is also a very important part of our structure, and of course our clients. How do they feel? What memories do they form? So it's a role that encompasses process design. It's a role that encompasses our marketing, our rich media production, our social media, our PR. So it's a very, it kind of would be a external only facing role, but in our company, the way we do things, it's very important for us that we say lead goes both ways. So, this premium feeling goes both ways. So for us, it's not for us, it's not acceptable that, for instance, we would create a, let's say, a sales process that would be premium and felt like, treat our clients like rock stars, while at the other end, our employees would be, sweating and living through stressful lives and able to fulfill that. So a lot of my workflow also goes into automating certain parts, using technology for making our processes and our interactions better, but also always having that premium aspect at heart. So today, my team is combined of 5 extraordinary professionals, extraordinary individuals that each of them basically are unicorns that can do many different things so well, and I'm so proud of each and every one of them today. And also as Chief Experience Officer, I work with other experience leads. It's how we call our departments. So we have the client experience, we have the employee experience, shareholder experience, which we're also very proud of. We have over 55% of our employees have chosen to become shareholders and invest in our company.
Fantastic.
In February this year. Yeah, thank you. We're very proud of that. Means that we're doing something right and that they believe in our growth and our potential and our vision and what we bring to the world. And with these experience leads, we together form the future, fulfill the strategy, decide on some long-term strategic goals, and then make sure that we follow the success that we have been doing for the last 12 years so far.
Wow, speechless.
Well,
fantastic.
Thank you.
I really want to deep dive and get your insights into I've been involved in innovation and business development most of my career, and you have been as well. So I really want to get your insights into, you've always got two sides of people. You've got people that love new technologies, that love innovations, that use all the apps possible. And then you've got people that are questioning the privacy, that apps are basically destroying and taking away our privacy, our freedom, and everything. So I really want to get your perspective. How do you look at all these new technologies that are coming into our lives?
Technology is a very funny thing. It's a very broad term. But when we talk about technology and we talk about security and we talk about data breaches and leaks and passwords being published somewhere, all of that comes down to people. People are the entities behind the technologies. Those are the creators, the maintainers, the deciders on what we build, how we build it, and also decide on its protection, the time that it's invested into making sure that something is stable. So technology is in its essence not good or bad. Technology is almost like a weapon, or it's a means to an end. And it's it depends on us as people on how we're going to use technology going forward. And there's a lot of really interesting technology trends happening around us. And I think that as long as we as a society are going to be conscious in trying to use technology to better people's lives, making sure that our tasks become more meaningful and more focused on what we as people bring that machines cannot, making sure that, let's say, manual repetition tasks and things that can be easily solved by computers are used on a daily basis. I think that I have no concerns, and of course, being a technology company, I know that, of course, our livelihood depends on it. But the future of technology is that what we start noticing is that a lot of the companies, traditional companies, are starting to become digital powerhouses.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
So companies, for instance, if we take IKEA as an example, as one of those companies, IKEA is no longer a furniture company. IKEA started of being as a little wooden toy company in the middle of Sweden, transitioned to being a furniture company that has affordable and let's say Scandinavian style, Nordic style, simplistic furniture, to now being identified as we are a digital company. We create digital products to serve our business means, our customers, and the community around us, but we also build furniture. And that mindset is being taken by so many companies these days, because the way that the world is moving, the way that these companies need to be empowered and enabled by technology, they need to form their own digital organizations. They need to form their own digital development teams, their own digital strategies that are going to enable them to be around in 10 and 15 years. Because as much as for us, it is for them that they're also facing demands that are not formed by our customers in our experiences, meaning in our shopping experience. For instance, there's a lot of external experience coming from platforms like TikTok, Facebook, other social media that bring kind of sort of general expectations of what a certain product should do, should feel like, should look like, how fast it should work, where it should be available, how social it should be, how easy it should be to use. And all those pressures, all those user demands make it into every single industry in the world. So even if you're ordering, for instance, logs of oak or pine from somewhere, those users, those end users who are actually making that order have the same expectations as they have on modern social or modern cutting-edge technology tooling. So it's up to these companies to make sure that they can fulfill those user needs, because if they won't, someone else will.
How do you look at? We've got the big four horses, the big four players. I'm talking about Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, and they've basically during the Corona times they've gotten even bigger. They've gotten scarier, and they're basically just a monopolist in a way in their own industry. So how would you look at them? Do you think that where are they going? Can you make some predictions? Maybe share some opinion.
A lot of the world right now is. I think if we would spin back 10 years ago, it was all about the cloud, and those computing platforms aren't going anywhere. We do have an obvious kind of leader and winner right now in there, which is Amazon. But it's funny how things happen in technology companies. I mean, all of a sudden, if we were to talk about Google 5-10 years ago, we would talk about this awesome, innovative company that is a pleasure to work for, that has this huge hub where people have daycare and restaurants and I don't know all these perks, and it's amazing how easy it can shift from being kind of that contributor to society to being the kind of publicly to being basically a public threat towards privacy and privacy and kind of data ownership. I don't know what's what's the future of these companies? Facebook's future looks darker every minute as time goes by. I do think that Apple is taking a really good stance when it comes to privacy and kind of being a default opt-out company, meaning that you have to specifically enable and allow for certain information sharing or information use. Microsoft is climbing in there. I think Microsoft reputation has drastically changed over the couple of last years or over the course of the last decade. They went from this boring corporation to actually being a cool company again. But it's impossible to say what's hidden behind these research labs that these companies are holding. I mean, there's a big rumor about Apple taking the AR, the augmented reality step, quite soon. So we'll see how they do with that, since a lot of companies failed on that venture. I mean, Microsoft and Google included. So it's tough, but from a technology perspective, I think the future will also look brighter for a lot more niche companies that we're not aware of so much right now. I mean, there's also other forms of technologies that these companies are not heavily investing on. So, you know, we have yet to see a real productive, real life use of a blockchain model, for instance. I mean, it would be very interesting to see what actually happens in that sphere. Where does that ledger and that traceability and that public visibility actually come to play the most at? In what industry, in what application, in what use case? And I think that those companies are probably not going to be the ones that figure that out, but those companies are somehow going to be involved in that process, either through acquisitions or through partnerships or through common initiatives when that arises, or just by copying it at some point. But I think we're going to see a lot of smaller players rising up soon. I mean, did you know about Zoom like 2 years ago? I mean, did you use Zoom? You know,
no, nobody probably.
I mean, where is Skype? You know, things change dramatically fast in this industry, and it's scary. We live in a world where it's colored by a lot of communication. I mean, we live in a world where a statement from a CEO can kill the company overnight. If that statement is not accepted by the majority of people. It doesn't matter if it has the right technology, the wrong technology, if it has a tool that helps people or not. We live in a world where a product can go viral from having 3 downloads or having 100 calls a week to being the most rapidly growing voice over IP company in the world, like Zoom. So it's the only thing we know about the future in technology, or the future in general, is that it will constantly change. That's the only thing we can be sure of. But at this point on, I would be a fool to predict what's going to happen in a month or so. I mean, we see very big movements in like edge computing. We see big movements in automation of processes and actually robotic processes here. There's, all this talk about Industry 4.0 and all these big catchphrases that you hear from, other consulting companies that have to have a standard to bill for. But embrace technology. Don't fear technology. It's not here to, take your job. It's not here to do any harm when basically used properly, and, also create it with the right quality. In my mind, technology is here to help us, to make sure that our time, which is the only limited currency that we have as people, that our time is actually put towards meaningful tasks that are actually designed for humans. Decisions that cannot be made with empathy and with a broader outlook by machines and computers.
I agree with you, and there's a interesting study was done that approximately 100 years ago, the amount of information in a lifetime was equivalent to around 50 books. Today, every human gets per day around 170 newspapers of information. So it's really it's overwhelming. Let's go to, I really want to see and hear your thoughts and how you tackle this, because you have an international corporation. So you have two different cultures. You've got Sweden and you've got Slovenia.
Yeah.
And we know that different people work differently together, and usually it's a great thing. But I want to see how you tackle this. We know that Sweden has a particular different culture, while Slovenia is on the other hand quite specific.
Yeah, great question. Tricky one to answer without getting on anyone's bad side. I lived in Sweden for almost 5 years. I love living in Sweden. It's a great place full of fantastic people. And, you know, if there's anything to say about Swedes, they're really great, warm friends, but they're not the best of strangers. But I think, you know, our countries are much more similar than we tend to think. I mean, I think that Sweden has made a lot of really important and I would say world leading steps when it comes to social equality and social tools that enable a society to actually have a safety net for people, so that there's much less likelihood of people failing, of people going into devastating circumstances, and enable them to actually focus on what they want to do. I don't think we're there yet here in Slovenia, but I do think that there are not so many huge differences in that we're not so far behind. I mean, Slovenia also has a lot of very prideful achievements as a society that I think we often forget about. But of course, there are cultural differences, and those come both from the, let's call it the stress side. What I've noticed, for instance, here is that people often tend to show their involvement with more effort. So that can be interpreted in more time or doing things faster. While in Sweden, there might be a bit more relaxed approach to things, a bit more democratic approach. So it's definitely in Sweden, the ways of working are always discussions. There's a lot of discussions that we get into. So making sure that everyone's on board with everything and that no one feels to be left out. So that's a big part of their culture. Well, here it's, I think, a bit more about being reactive and making sure of being fast and first to do something. So I think that's sometimes where we might see some clashes in forms of understanding and culture. Of course, communication is also different. Swedish communication is absolutely the communication that I like to take, which is making sure that I make my point, but that I do not harm anyone in the process. I make sure that I try to communicate in a way that I do not point anyone out, or that there isn't a certain group or a certain person or a certain situation that feels exposed. Well, here I think we're very quick to jump the gun sometimes, and we just like to get efficient. We just like to get down to the facts, and we like to move forward. But I mean, I appreciate both cultures, and I appreciate the mixture of those the most. And what I've seen here, let's say the main benefit that I've seen for us and our clients here in Slovenia is the fact that we come from very humble beginnings in Slovenia, especially when you're a software developer. When you're a software developer and you start in a smaller company here, or even a mid-size or a large company, you're kind of expected to do a bit more out of your comfort zone. So Slovenia in itself does not breed specialists. Slovenia in most areas breeds generalists.
True. Yeah.
Because you're expected to do a bit of architectural development. You're expected to come up with your own approach to things. You're kind of expected to do some time management and project manage it. Maybe, even invoice someone. You can also do some basic design in UX. And then, if you have some time, there's a printer that needs fixing back there, and there's Wi-Fi is not working.
And
so
coffee needs to be made.
But that's not always a bad thing. I mean, I used to think of it as like not ideal, but it has a tremendous value because it brings this ingenuity that specialists do not get to experience.
True. Yeah.
And when you combine specialists that have that platform of becoming specialists, of being able to have the comfort on focusing on one role and doing that really, really, really well and in depth. And when you combine those specialists with generalists that are able to understand products, scope, and the product's broader vision, and the problems that a specialist would not think about. When you combine those two, that's when you start seeing the magic happen. And that's something in our magic formula that kind of works really well. And I have to say, the last year hasn't been the best for us to meet, but we meet frequently. We travel a lot in either for project purposes, or for social purposes. As you mentioned before, we have a lot of different initiatives throughout the year.
Yeah.
We have the No Banga Days. Those happen like 3 times a year, and one of them is a long weekend, like a 3-4 night thing somewhere internationally in Europe, where we all meet and have a fantastic time together. I don't know. I've kind of stopped worrying about the culture and the backgrounds of people, of where they're coming from so much, because in the end, what brings them together is this passion for software. And that's where they leave behind all cultural expectations or all cultural differences that, might be embodied into them in their childhood and development.
Tell me a little bit about, I lived abroad and I've studied abroad and I've worked abroad, and you have a lot of experiences also living and working abroad. So tell me a little bit about, do you think this is your advantage that you've been out there, that you've experienced this different mindset, innovation? And do you think that Triton 37 also has an advantage because it works in 2 different markets internationally? So you have a different mindset. You're open. You're more competitive. You're different, unique.
The international aspect, I think, plays a role. Sometimes that is a positive, sometimes that is a negative thing. It does depend on the person. My personal experience, it definitely opened up my mind when I was operating both in Canada and in Sweden. Those are 2 very open cultures, both politically, socially, and also from a business perspective. I never envisioned that I'm going to be sitting here in Ljubljana, overlooking this beautiful skyline and, looking at the mountains there. I never envisioned that. I kind of thought that, Sweden was the end stop for us. But when this opportunity was presented to me, I did it only under one condition. And that was, I wanted to bring some lasting change to this environment. So for me, the business goals alone that we had to actually move from, move our culture, move our contribution to a new country, the business goals weren't nearly enough. So I was looking for some lasting change in an environment that needed it. And to me at that time, it felt like Slovenia really needed some international experiences on how to treat people and how to lead people, because there's a huge gap between managing and leading. True. In my book.
Completely agree. Yeah.
And what I've seen in this area before is that a lot of the companies, even though they had a broad experience internationally, there are startups that formed in Ljubljana or formed in Silicon Valley or, then kind of made it their way back here. But I was super frustrated when, when I got to know these companies before we moved here, and all I saw was that they brought like a beanbag chair and free coffee,
pool table,
and a pool table with them, but leaving all that, all those things that they've learned abroad, how to work with people, how to treat people, how to embrace differences, how to embrace a new generation of employees and basically professionals that we're getting, and they just left that behind because that's good enough for this environment. And that's where my international experience, that's where my experiences from Sweden and working with also these companies and enterprises where there's a lot of different initiatives that have to be done on that scale in order to breed an open culture came to play. So my mission here was make a lasting change, make a bump in the universe, use that international experience for the good, because you can easily use it for a business advantage only. That's the easiest thing to do. But the most difficult thing to do is to use your experiences toward a lasting change that affects people permanently, not only financially at that point in time, but also permanently from their personal development and their career development perspective.
So you've been here in Sweden for the past 3 years, in Slovenia for the past 3 years, trying to make a difference, this fresh air of new culture, innovation, and you're here to challenge the status quo.
Absolutely.
So I know there's been a lot of companies trying to copy what you do, trying to take some ideas and take them and make them their own. So how are you going to do that? How are you going to share with us, please, if you can? How are you going to change the status quo? What's your plan? I know that you have ambitious things on your mind. I know that you're a person that likes challenges, and I know that you're also a high achiever. So I know that you're going to make some big plans. So can you share some plans with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to touch up on what you just said. There's some companies that copied some stuff, and there's some companies that adapted. That's exactly what I'm going for.
Awesome.
Adapt, copy, be better. Push us, push me to try even harder. Set the bar higher, because it doesn't benefit me. It doesn't benefit, it kind of benefits me and our company. It benefits you and your company. But what it benefits the most is this community and the maturity of this society and in this industry.
Ecosystem, true.
And we brought in some different approaches. We brought in a different mindset. But what I'm super happy about is that I do see results from that. Because my theory, and back in 2017, where we were really preparing to take this journey, was that our benefits, our culture, our mindset will be appealing to some people. And sometimes, hopefully, it will be appealing to people that some people cannot afford to lose. And once someone experiences a different mindset, a different type of respect, a different type of leadership, a different type of involvement, it's very difficult to go back, right?
True.
It's very difficult to take a step back. And there's no, there's no amount of money. Of course, there's an amount of money. There's always an amount of money. But it's not only about, getting a 10% higher salary somewhere that someone can buy you back. They're going to have to change their core. And that's what we wanted to do, is we wanted to create this lasting change that's going to affect other companies, other employers, starting with our IT industry, where we are competing for the same piece of the pie. And our pie is talented individuals in this region. But also, making the pie bigger together by offering better conditions, better mindset, more mature environment, making this area here desirable also for people who do not currently reside in Slovenia. So making sure that, this becomes a technical hub, and then eventually also influencing other industries besides IT. IT is a very privileged industry. This is one of the rare industries where you have almost employees dictating terms on the market.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's highly competitive. There's a huge lack of people And it doesn't seem like that's going away at any time soon. So what I wish for this environment here in this region is that other industries will be affected by this and will be together with these companies that we're competing with currently in this market, that together will be able to set some standards of what is right and what is not right when it comes to leading people, nurturing people, and building them for a successful point in life.
So let's talk a little bit about we came from social distancing to distance socializing, and now we're experiencing a new paradigm. This is the new workplace without boundaries. So how do you look at the new hybrid workplace, where basically you have people working from home, working from the office? I know that the trend is going to be that most of the people that are going to be looking for new companies, new employers, are actually going to be demanding that they work from home as well. And I've read a research where it says that the employers that are not going to offer work from home are actually going to be obsolete. So how do you look at that?
I think that comes down to empathy and also having an understanding of the needs of a certain person. And I think it's very important to know as employers and as companies that something that works for one person will definitely not work for another one. And work from home or hybrid work or work from anywhere or work at the office are very complex things to tackle. What we've decided to do is to have a model that is more tailored to individual purposes and needs. And we work in very different cities. We work here in Ljubljana, we work in Lund, we work in Helsingborg, we work in Stockholm, for instance. And, you know, those employees living in those areas have very, very different needs and expectations. For instance, housing in Stockholm is extremely expensive. What you can afford as a regular mortal is a very small apartment where there's not much room for you to take calls during the day or meetings, or actually have comfort in working during 8 hours or 6 hours or how many hours you work a day. And, you know, that comes down to some individuals actually not having that luxury of having enough privacy or enough solitude to actually make sure that their work gets done the way they want to get their work done. So those employees, for instance, are seeking either collaborative workspaces in the Stockholm area where they can go and they can, you know, hang out and do their work and have a room which is quiet and, you know, air conditioned and, you know, private. And then you have other aspects. You have people where commuting has been a big part of their life. And of course, in those cases, to me, it doesn't really come as a surprise that we do not want people spending their time in a car 2 or 3 or 1 hour a day even. I mean, it's both dangerous, it's both a waste of their potential.
Yeah.
And then you have people who are like in this hybrid section where they, you know, would like to have the best of both worlds, that they want to accommodate their family lifestyle, maybe, you know, spend more time with the kids, take them to daycare some days in the week, but then also see some colleagues and be challenged. What I do see with some employers and with some companies is that working from home, companies that do kind of go like full on remote work also do tend to cover some of the realities to their employees. So sometimes it's just a budget cut. So yeah, of course. I mean, of course we can just cut off,
lower the costs.
You know, a couple of 100,000 from an EBITDA every year. Of course, perfect. You know, solved. But I think every employer needs to also think about, what does that mean for my employees? What does that mean for their social stability, for their psychological stability, if they're isolated somewhere? If our only interaction is interaction through cameras and microphones, then I think that's a very sad world that I really hope will not get there.
Well, yeah.
And also we have to think about how difficult it is for new employees, new colleagues that join a company, how difficult it is to just build bonds on a regular level, like us sitting here, like 1 meter across, or, you
exactly,
know,
yeah.
It's already difficult. But with digital, it becomes so much more difficult. So onboarding people properly, making sure that they get the best of this experience will be definitely much more challenging in remote working setups than in in-person working setups. Knowledge sharing. It's something that happens usually organically with 2, 3, or more people sitting in a room or in a or having coffee. When you let your mind relax, when you let your mind not be stressed or always focused on something, that's where the best ideas happen. That's where the best advice happens. That's where the best conversations happen. And by being digital, it is definitely challenging to have those conversations organically, or we have much less of those conversations. And then we have another aspects of remote work. We've seen so many employers. I mean, thankfully not in with our clients or with our industry, but we do see a lot of companies that have headquarters even in the United States primarily, executing detailed controlling on their employees. There's software running on your computer, testing and checking whether you're moving the mouse, whether you're moving your eyes and irises, how fast are you typing, how many code lines have you submitted.
Oh.
It's so there's so many nuances to this question. But as always, if you put people first, if you're able to spend that extra energy of being adaptive, of course, having some core approach to it. And our core approach at 37 is being adaptive and understanding individual needs. And those needs differ from where you are in life. If you have a family, if you're distant from the hub or the office where your employer has their headquarters or just a place of work, or if you're close by in a small apartment, single, or enjoying the life with your significant other, there's so many flavors and nuances to this. People who are in the beginning of their career, I think, would benefit much more from being surrounded by people in person than people who are seasoned seniors in their roles with 15, 20 years of experience or more. So it's a very complex question, and I do not have an answer for you. I'm so sorry. But I think that every company should figure this out for themselves. Take a look at your employees. Take a look at what company you want to be. Cutting down your offices, not having a place, that's not going to fly. I can promise you that. You're always going to have a place where your employees collaborate, where your employees can feel that they have a hub, that they have a stable point where they can meet and talk. I think that's not going away. So what I see as a modern office is offices that are focused more on collaborative areas, offices that have proportionally much less seating areas, much less work desks, dedicated work desks, that are dedicated to conversation, ideation, and also just, knowledge sharing and fun. That's how I see the future. And that's also what we've decided to do with our future.
Wow. I love your way of thinking. That's why you're obviously the chief experience officer.
Oh, thank you.
And I have to say, I completely agree with you. I know that the creativity, the brainstorming, the water cooler moments, those are things that you need to experience in person.
There's a huge psychological aspect also when it comes to not changing your environment. I'm not a doctor or a psychologist or anything even closely, but there definitely is a huge benefit to changing your environment. Also, what I've noticed is that when people work from home, people who usually would not work longer than, let's say, 8 hours or something like that, they tend to get caught up in this trap of just one more thing, just one more thing. And there's always just one more thing, because as most industries, but especially software, it's never done. It can always be better. It can always be faster. It can always be smaller. It can always be, safer, more stable or something like that. And I think people get caught in this trap because they do not have to switch their environment. So you're at home, it's 4 o'clock, it's 5 o'clock, you don't have to go anywhere. You're already there. Even if you decided to cook lunch, that can, just a bit more. You know, your kid is at home, or, you know, it's next door or something like that. So you do not have to switch your environment to do a task. So it also means that you're not having a mental break where you can reflect on what the hell you're actually doing. And I think that working from home constantly can, for some people, be a trap in actually being more stressed, having longer work days, being less active. I mean, for some people, you know, the recreation or the physical activity that they get in a day is actually that commute, and that can be a bike, that could be I don't know, a walk, that could be even, you know, just walking to a bus and to a train, and, you know, but it is something. While when you're actually not changing your environment, you can actually go the entire day without stepping more than 100 steps in a day. I mean, and that's scary. We're already primarily sitting society.
True.
And that this is not making it better. I understand the comfort and the benefits of that. And I think that employees that would like to take use and actually see benefits in their life and their lifestyle should absolutely advocate for having that flexibility of working from home. But I also think it's up to us as leaders and as employees to make sure that they also understand the indirect consequences that they're taking with that, the things that are missing with that, because it's always a trade-off.
True. Let's go to your personal life, and I'm really curious. There's a saying that everybody has. Let's call it the aha moment, the epiphany, the time in your life where you basically realize, this is what I want to do. This is my dream. This is my passion. This is my vision. So was there a specific moment in your life, in your career, where you basically had this epiphany or the aha moment, and you said, this is what I want to do. I want to challenge the status quo. I want to change the world. This is my path, my vision.
Oh, man. That's a really difficult question. First of all, I don't think I'm challenging the world in that aspect or changing the world. I'm doing my best that I can for a scope and a community that I think I can contribute to. And I'm proud of that. And I would like to do more about it. The aha moment. Well, the only thing that I know is that I want to continue creating. And that creating can be anything. It can be a company. It can be a culture. It can be, you know, like an office. It can be a product. But basically my aha moment would probably be accepting that I am a great innovator, let's say a visionary. I wouldn't say I'm an inventor in any way, but I'm pretty good at coupling different things together and forming some new approach. And recognizing that I maybe not be the most stable and the best driver of these things that I built. So I tend to, you know, build things, move things forward, and then surround myself with people who are really, really fantastic, inspiring individuals that are much better drivers and much better complementers to the built thing. And I mean, that's happening here in Ljubljana right now as well. I mean, I've started this initiative here, you know, I've got it to a certain point, but now it's time to actually focus on a different thing, and this is a chief experience thing, and actually leave certain parts that I was responsible for before to people who are really passionate and really skilled in those areas. So that's the aha moment, you know, allowing myself to decouple from these things. That was kind of the winning situation for me, because otherwise in the past I would just continue obsessing about it and continue driving them, and it wasn't very healthy.
Okay, now let's go to the uhu moment. No, I'm just joking. Let's go to and let's say dig in or scratch the surface of your personal life. Tell me a little bit about what you like to read. Is there a TV show you like to watch? Is there a book you think is fantastic and you would like to share with the audience?
Well, that's a tricky one. I surround myself with so much work and ambition that there's not much time left for other things. I do often tend to play it safe when it comes to like TV shows and movies and stuff. I mean, I love things that are done with a lot of attention to detail, quality. So, old black and white movies and, old Hollywood. It's what does it for me. And then, if there's a series that I rewatch like twice every year, it's probably like Breaking Bad. It's usually playing in the background somewhere when I'm cooking or when I'm, answering emails and those things.
So when you're cooking, you're listening to watching Breaking Bad while they're cooking.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just joking.
Exactly. Not the same thing though. When it comes to books, Thank You for Feedback has been one that has, I think, made me a much better acceptor of, let's say, both criticism and also input. I think that has been a really good book that I would recommend to anyone. I wouldn't call it life-changing, but definitely opened up a different path for me to take. Because when you're involved in creating things so much, and when you put your life into every single second of what you're building, it's very easy to take every comment and even super well-intended comments and inputs as a personal attack. And I think that after reflecting on that a couple of years ago by reading that book and then training myself to be much better at that and trying to position myself out of the box when I'm looking at these things, I think that that's something that I would recommend. Like, if you haven't read that's good. Right now I'm reading A Beautiful Constraint. It's a fantastic book on thinking outside the box and actually using the situations that you cannot control in your favor, or actually making the best out of it. It's a wonderful, not too long book, wonderfully phrased and written. So that would be maybe a book to recommend.
What about your hobbies, the stress releasers, the things that you do when you're not...
I do a lot of digital art. I started quite young in doing that, so there's a lot of 3D art and just basic digital drawing, digital compositions. I really love to create also things in motion, so I do a lot of animation in those things just to pass the time sometimes, or to challenge myself in doing something that I haven't done before. But then cooking is something that has been a big part of my life. I think it's obvious I enjoy eating, so I like cooking as well. And then to kind of try to counterbalance that, I think the only way that helps me completely disconnect from my everyday thoughts and work-related stress is when I have the opportunity to go to the gym. And that is where my mind is basically just, well, it would really suck if this would fall on you. Don't, don't fail here. Don't kill yourself. I haven't been so good at that at the last, since October, since we went into lockdown, but I'm trying to gather the motivation to start that again.
Okay, let's go to the final question. And I don't want to put any pressure, but it is a very important question. We have quite a big audience. You've got young students, entrepreneurs, and you've got also a lot of directors, presidents of the boards, management boards. So there is a lot of people already in our community. So my final question would be, is there an advice, a knowledge, a lesson learned you can share with us that would help us open our eyes? Or
no pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah, if I would have to choose one, is make sure that you're selfless when it comes to people. When you're building people, try to build better people than yourself. Try to build people that are better in everything that you do than you are. It's about building that next generation. It's about understanding where that generation or that individual is coming from. Each one is different than the previous one or the one next to them. I think that what's important and what will be even more important going forward is our ability as leaders to be able to recognize that those differences and also understand the generational movement that has happened in the last, let's say, 2 generations. So ruling with the firm hand and having every answer as, oh, I used to be in the army at that age, or, and just disqualifying everything a person says and basically murdering their character or their reasoning, that is something that I think has to die in this society. There's no room for that in modern organizations. But I wish that there will be more leaders practicing empathy, understanding, servant leadership, making sure that you are there for them. They are not there for you or for your ego. They're not there for you to call them my employees or my people. I mean, they're your team.
Absolutely.
Stand up for your team. Take the fault. If they mess up, sometimes they'll learn. They'll be better. And, always pass on the praise. Make sure that you identify situations where they need to be picked up, and identify the situations where you also need to let them expand. Sometimes the most difficult thing when it comes to leadership or when it comes to movement is also enabling them to move on.
Absolutely.
Don't get too stuck on, we've invested this much into you and this is how you repay us. That's something that it's not a valid argument. Celebrate that a person has taken this stepping stone and actually progressed through your culture, through your mentorship, through your presence into a better future for themselves. And maybe you don't see it as a better future for them at that point, but it's important about how they feel, what they need. And, if you work with that properly, and if you work with that in a right, understanding way, there's a higher chance that in the future, you're going to have an opportunity to work with that same person or actually learn from that person, because they're going to be so much better by another experience more. So I don't know. Does that count as an advice? I don't know. Feels like
I think it does. I think it does. It's a life lesson. And with that said, I really want to thank you. And so, dear Beyond Leaders, today with us, I'm extremely thankful to have Nejc Palir, Chief Experience Officer of Triathlon 37, mentor, friend, entrepreneur, innovator, and I'm going to say the person who always challenges status quo. So, Nejc, amazing insights, a lot of experiences, thoughts, and you were absolutely amazing. So thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Sledite nam na vseh kanalih, kot so Spotify, Apple, Google, Castbox in tudi YouTube, LinkedIn in Facebook, kjer nas je že preko 2000.